All right, it's that moment of truth. We're building your golf swing, so we're going to keep it going. We are getting into impact today, so let's do it. What's going on, everybody? Scott Hogan coming at you. We're here. We're in the studio. We are building your golf swing. So we have started from the address position. We have worked through the P system. Again, if you're not familiar with that, these are the P positions of the golf swing, going from P1 address all the way through P9 or 10, however you want to label it, to the finish. All right. So we are working today on going from what we said P5.5 to P7, which is impact. All right. So again, those positions are just a way for everybody to be on the same page about kind of exactly where you're at in the golf swing. You don't have to use them. I honestly don't use them that much, other than when I might be talking with somebody that, I know knows the system as they're going. But anyway, we are getting into impact. And as I've talked about in the past, the golf swing is a system. It's a sequence of events. All right. So if you start off in a wrong position, or you're working through the early part of the swing and it gets off, you have to make up for things later on. Now, I want one caveat in this. I will sometimes start with people with impact. It really just depends on the student. I use my intuition and my experience teaching to decide if this is a starting place, because depending on the person, it might be helpful to understand where they are trying to go. Then they can build the swing to get to that position. Now, I will say that's not many, and it usually isn't for everybody, but just a thought as you're going through. Generally, you're going to want to start from P1. And if you did not watch our previous videos, make sure you go do that. I will link that down below or in the card above, okay? So how do we get into impact? Well, just like I was talking before, we're going to have a body part. We're going to have a part where we're talking about your hands, arms, and the club. We are also going to talk a little bit of numbers with the launch monitor, just so if you're hitting balls, you can kind of have an idea of what good launch conditions are. But as always, let's start it off with the body positions. All right, so when we're starting to talk about body positions in the swing, a couple of things that I like to see. So this is your chance now. This is when we get to start rotating. So we are going to have the body starting to do some rotating, but how you do that does really matter. So if you remember in the golf swing, we take it up to the top. As we start down, we should already be pressuring on our lead side of our body. Okay, so for me, that's my left side. I should have almost all my pressure on that lead side, and I'm bracing myself, getting this club to start down, because now this is where I want to start rotating my body. And how do we do that? Well, the way that we do this is we are actually going to start pushing up with our lead leg, okay? Remember in our takeaway, we said, hey, we need to turn in the backswing. Well, we do that by pressuring into the ground, which then causes a force that pushes us up. Remember, it's about what you can't see. That's the stuff you need to be doing. If you see it, that's just an effect usually. It's just something that's happening because you're doing something else. So we need to push down, which then pushes us kind of up to turn. That's what ends up happening, right? So what we need to do is get loaded up so we can turn by pushing up. So the way I like for people to feel this is you're going to push kind of back behind you and up, okay? So if you imagine the golf plane, the swing plane line, right? That's the direction essentially you're pushing your body. You're pushing your body back and up. This will help you with early extension, any of you out there that have that, because when you do this, you typically have to keep your body more bent forward so you can still hit the ball. That's what kicks your butt back. That's some of the stuff that will be correcting as you go. Now, the other thing that's going to happen here is as you're pushing back, I also want to feel like I'm pushing my pelvis forward as we go. I want to be moving forward. I need to get, especially with an iron, I need to get my low point forward of the golf ball. So I don't want to just push back and hang out back here, right? Because then I'm going to start hitting the ground early. The goal is I'm coming down, I'm going to push back and up and feel like I'm extending forward towards the target, trying to get my belt buckle moving forward as we go. And if I do that, I have a better chance of striking the ball solid. Kind of like that one. We like that. It's about as good as I can hit one. Okay, so that is the body motion. As far as your upper body, a couple of things that we would like to see. you are going to see your chest open up. It's typically going to be around 30 to 40 degrees open to the target. You also will be still tilting down to the golf ball. Same about 30, 40 degrees of tilt down to the golf ball where your body's going to tilt. Now, again, as you do this, I don't necessarily think about that too much. For a lot of people, if you start understanding how you want to hit the ball, and we'll have this later on in the system, I think you start seeing your numbers come through a little bit. For me, it's about starting to get the pressure up so your body turns and moving yourself forward so you can strike that golf ball solidly. That's going to be the big keys as we go through this. Now we get into hand and arm motion with the club. So if you remember from our transition, as we start down, this arm is going to start spiraling down. Our trail arm starts to spiral down. It's rotating down. And if we keep that wrist soft, it actually, by rotating our forearm, our trail wrist will start to extend backwards. That's what we want. That's how we get into a really good delivery position, okay? That's the key to that. Now, if we can get there, this does tend to be pretty simple, or hopefully it is. We would like that. We don't want it to be too much effort because the club is going really fast. So it's not like we have a ton of time to make any minor adjustments. So we need to have things lined up as we go. So a couple of things I like to see is I want to make sure that the club face is in a good spot. So it depends on the shot you want to hit. I like to draw the ball. So I want to see the club face more straight up and down. I want the toe straight up. That's going to be a little bit more open, but I swing outside or inside to out, right? So I swing to the outside. I'm trying to get that ball to start right. So I want the face a little more open. If you're a slicer or you're trying to hit a fade, you'd want that face a little bit more closed. So when you're coming down, you would actually just feel that arm twisting down to square it up just a little bit more as you go, okay? So that's gonna be the first thing that we wanna see. I want you to check where your club face is at. The biggest thing that people do is they come down, that face is pointing to the sky. That is no good. We do not want that. If you get there, you have to save it and you cannot rotate. Face is open, I start rotating, the face is going to stay open. That is not the fix to your slice. I hear that so much. I must not be firing my hips, that's why I can't, stop slicing. It is not. Firing your hips makes it worse. That is the first thing. Now, as far as what do we do with the club, again, our body is rotating, we're pushing up and back. Here are the 3 moves that we need to do. First one, and this is where everybody just starts to fight immediately on this, but it is true, and again, it is proven. We need to actually get the club tipping outward. It has to get out to the golf ball. I don't care who you are. You can swing it however you want. I know there's people that say, oh no, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, that type of stuff. It doesn't matter who you are. You can do it however you want, but the club has to tip out to the golf ball. It does, it just has to, okay? I cannot hit a golf ball with the club way back here. You might feel like you do that, okay? But you are not actually doing that, okay? So again, if it works for somebody with a feel, by all means, I love it. But that's not what we're doing here. We're telling you what is actually happening. So a lot of people will push back on this and say, well, Scott, you're telling me to actually cast the golf club. You're telling me to flip the golf club. Well, that is a little bit what I'm telling you to do. I want you to have some of this flipping motion in the golf swing. That is how you get the golf club to release. That's how you can put some speed. That's how you don't just trap the ball into the ground. That's how you get it in the air. I mean, it's just a huge, huge deal. But what I do want is you have to make sure you have some other components into your golf swing. The next one being, if I take my trail arm, again, we're rotating it down, we're rotating it down. When I get down here to delivery position of the club, this arm is bent, my trail arm is bent. And what I'm gonna do is spiral it more, and I'm going to push it beyond the golf ball. I want it to extend beyond the ball. So it kind of keeps spiraling. Notice how my palm is down to the ground. It's spiraling and pushing. If I combine the moves, right? So again, I'm kind of going like this. Again, if I don't do anything else, I'm gonna look like this, okay? But I'm moving the club head out, but I'm going to extend my arm. Look at how we look, right? Looks pretty good, right? So It's not that we don't want to have flip. You just need to extend your arm. You need to rotate and push your arm through the right way. That is the big key. And the fact that that's actually the dominating force. You are pushing more with that arm than you are flipping with your wrists. That is how you actually make impact look good. But the number one thing I see people do, especially if they're flippers, is they try to hold these wrists back, right? So I'm going to hold my wrist back. Well, what they end up doing is they do something like this. They can't hit it really well because the club is not getting out to the ball, so they do a lot of toe shots. I see a ton of that. I also see the club is not, you haven't released the club, so it has no speed. So the shaft actually doesn't have a chance to, we call it get let out. You're not letting the shaft out, so it's not going to go in the air, and you just get nothing on it. In those cases, I'd rather see somebody flip. I honestly much rather work with somebody that flips than somebody that just hangs on for dear life and they do what's called drag the handle. I don't want that. I want somebody that knows that this is a key move to the swing, and then we just need to add that arm motion as we go. Okay? That is how we get that part to kind of work together. All right, so let's give you a drill to work on. How do you make your impact better? Well, the one drill that works for pretty much everybody, it's a great drill to do, and it's not a coincidence. That's probably one of the more common drills that you see on the PGA Tour, the LPGA Tour, is simply just working on keeping your arms in structure, okay? If your arms can stay in a simple position, you're typically going to be able to do everything else as you go. So what ends up happening is when people are swinging, if we tip it out, but we don't move the club forward like we want, like pushing our arm forward, what we end up happening is our arms separate. If I go ahead and I actually hold on, and then I try to get down to the golf ball, our arms will separate, right? That's something that'll happen. So what I like to use is, you might have seen it, a lot of people use the smart ball. My favorite aid is actually this arm alarm from Y Golf. I like it because it's just a little more adjustable to each person. You know, I have wider arms and I'm a wider body, so it's a little bit harder with the ball. But all we got is a rope here with some tension on it, and all I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna extend this out a little bit, is I'm just gonna feel like I keep the tension in the band, right? So what that means is I gotta actually feel like I actually squeeze my arms together as I do this drill. So if I can go through and just keep the band together, then I'm going to be working on a really good impact position. So one of the easiest drills to do, again, I like this aid because if you do mess it up, it beeps at you. Obviously you can tell when the band is not connected as well. But the smart balls work too, or the pro senders, all those things, I have those as well. But this is always the one I go to first if that's something I'm gonna use, all right? So keeping those arms in structure and keeping like they're gonna stay together through the hit, you can even go through the rest of the swing, is going to be a big help for making your impact a lot better, okay? So that is a great way to practice it, but one word of caution, while you are practicing with the drill, make sure you are feeling those forces that I talked about, because that's how you're gonna be able to do it when you take the drill off. That's gonna be the huge thing. The drill is helping you, but you gotta know what you're doing, so when you don't have the drill anymore, you're able to still do it, okay? So that is the drill that I like to see. All right, and so the last thing I want to do, let's talk some launch monitor numbers. So when I'm talking about launch monitor numbers for impact, you'll notice I'm not worried about where the ball goes yet, okay? I want just, hey, can I get the club to deliver in a way that can be consistent? So 3 numbers that I would look at: angle of attack, dynamic loft, launch vertical, vertical launch of the ball. You could argue I should put low point in here. I think it's similar to angle of attack, right? If I'm hitting down on an iron, my low point should be in front of the golf ball. If I'm hitting up, the low point should be behind the ball. So they go really, really close together, right? So I do want to see an angle of attack down. Honestly, with the 7-iron, I would like to see more of an angle of attack down. I want to be closer to like 3 or 4, but that would be something you can look at. You need a negative attack angle on your irons. You should have a positive attack angle on your driver unless you have crazy speed. But even then, I would argue you should have a positive one. So that would be the first thing. The second thing, dynamic loft. What is the loft that you are delivering the golf club? So if you do not know the loft of your golf clubs or about what they are, I'd highly recommend you go look it up. You can just go to your manufacturer's website. They list all the specs. So I have my 7-iron here. Again, depending on your manufacturer, mine are a little weaker because I don't want to have the super D-loft. But I have about 34 degrees of loft on my 7-iron. So you can see at impact, I'm actually delivering with the club 25 degrees of loft. You should have less loft. And even with the driver, you should have a little bit less loft, or you should be really close to zero with the driver maybe, but you should have less loft with an iron or a wedge as you're going through, okay? You should have less loft. And it can be up to like 10 degrees. If you think about pros and how much they do, that's the crazy number. So again, how does that not happen? Well, if I go through, a lot of times I just flick my wrists. I'm not moving my arms through. So they just kind of flick, do something like that. Now I've delivered 42 degrees of loft at impact there, and that ball's not gonna go very far as we go. So again, then I just need to work on, again, I don't hate the flick, but we need to move that arm through that impact, keep those arms together, and now all of a sudden I am back down. And there's my angle of attack. I want that angle of attack at -5. And then the last one, launch vertical, just to give you an idea of how low people launch the golf ball. So we're gonna go over this in a little more detail, but you need to launch the ball lower because what happens is that helps you create more spin, and it actually gives you more stopping power. I will talk more about that in a separate video, but you need to get the ball to launch lower so it spins and then it will come down at a steeper angle. That is what happens. Pros are going to be in the 17, 16. Think about that. I brought my loft down from the mid-30s to a ball that is launching at 17. If I do that, that's how I get the middle of the club face on the golf ball, and I can hit the ball some similar distances. That is a huge deal. So these are the things, when we're trying to work through impact, this is what I want to see. D-loft, hitting down with some angle of attack. Again, we're not necessarily crashing down on it, but I definitely want to see some angle of attack down. And I also want to see that ball coming out a little lower. These numbers will give you an idea if things are working pretty good or if you got some room to work with and you got to keep going, all right? So that is what I like to see from a launch monitor standpoint. So that is breaking down impact. There's a lot to unpack there. Watch this video again and again, save it. Make sure you're going through it. I promise you, it will help you. I can help people gain 20, 30, 40 yards on a 7-iron if you can get these impact numbers. It sounds crazy, but if you understand what's going on with the club, it will make a difference and you will hit the ball much more crisp and solid. So that is what we're looking for. If you have questions about it, please let me know. And again, if you're looking for a way to work on this, I have another drill that I think will really help you. I'm going to link that right up here. That is the John Rahm drill, a great one to help you start feeling impact and kind of how things are moving. So make sure you check that out and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks everybody for watching. Peace.